I'm afraid you got to smash it.
Yeah, we'll just get recording on this. It's made that more than one hit. Okay. Josh?
Don't smash the right here.
Okay, I better do it, I think. All set? Yeah.
I don't think that pole's high enough, is it? It's the adjustment in your face. Yeah. That's brilliant. Brilliant. It is, isn't it? Yeah, rusted into the frame, isn't it? Yeah. That's the only original thing left on it, almost. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll start the official proceedings here. Good afternoon and welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon on a fairly momentous occasion in my view to celebrate a very important milestone in the Bendigo Tram. My name is Josh Gordon and at the moment I'm the Tramways manager for the Tram and Bendigo Tramways. Before we start with all the other official bits, I'd like to acknowledge a few special guests that have joined us for today. First of all, there's Councillor Lisa O'Fell, Mayor for the City of Greater Bendigo. I think Councillor Elise Chapman and Councillor Helen Leach are here as well. Craig Lapsley, who is currently the Victoria's Fire Commissioner. Paul Rowan from the Sandhurst Trustees. Gordon McKern is the next Chairman of the Sandhurst Trustees. I think Mel Kirsting hopefully will join us. He's not here, I haven't spotted him, but Mel is the Regional Manager for Vic Roads. Mr Lloyd Cameron, Chairman of the Bendigo Trust. Clive Walker, who is a Board Member of the Bendigo Trust. Past Chairman of the Bendigo Trust, Darryl McClure, Dennis Ahoy and James Loeb. Also Tom Seddon, the current CEO of the Bendigo Trust. Mara Potter, past CEO of the Bendigo Trust, and also a very special and warm welcome to Pipe Major Warren Matheson and the Bendigo Highland Pipe Band. Got a few apologies here for people that were unable to make it today. Mr Craig Neiman, CEO of the City of Greater Bendigo, Councillor Rod Fife, Councillor Rod Campbell, David Wright and Helen Yorston, who are members of the Bendigo Trust Board, weren't able to make it today. I've also got apologies from Catherine McKenzie, who's the Executive Manager of Tourism, Rachel Lee, Manager for Major Projects, and our ex-Tramways managers Kim Smith and Tim Borges. We've got a few bits on today, but we'll try and keep the formalities brief. And before we go on to anything else, I'd like you to enjoy a brief video about the battle for the trams.
It was in the early 1970s that the Bendigo Tramway reached a crossroads. The Victorian Parliament had granted the State Electricity Commission's application for abandonment of the tramways. But the people of Bendigo weren't quite ready to say goodbye. As the last day of service loomed, public opinion was running high.
The trams in Bendigo, and he said to me, "What are you doing about the trams in Bendigo? If someone doesn't do something soon, those trams are going to be dispersed all over the world." And I said to him, "Alistair, what can one person do in a situation like this?" And I will never forget what he said. He said, "You'll be amazed what one enthusiastic, energetic person can do in this world." Okay.
The Bendigo Trust was established in 1970 because of concern in the community that the legacy of the past was being squandered. With the tramway system under threat, a small study group was set up by the Bendigo Trust to look at retaining the trams. In July 1971, they submitted a proposal to the Bendigo City Council asking to keep the trams as a tourist attraction. By August, the council gave its positive backing.
I believe Bendigo has an opportunity to become as renowned for its trams as it is for its gold. And this is important, and the only time for action is now, underlined emphatically.
After receiving hundreds of letters from Bendigonians and a petition with over 5,000 signatures, it wasn't too long before the state government also came to the party.
But just the enthusiasm of the citizens of Bendigo, in addition to the signatories, was phenomenal.
It was amazing.
I don't think there has been another issue where Bendigo people got behind a cause.
The different complexion of the state government obviously caused them a lot of reflection about what was being asked for in Bendigo, and I think they recognised as it was getting closer to an election that there was popular support for what we were on about, and I think that as much as anything led to the decision to support us.
Of course, not everyone was supportive.
Well, they had these plans for a divided road up Macrae Street.
Yeah.
And they were determined to build that, and this keeping the trams was going to thwart that long-held civil engineering ambition.
Detractors suggested that a bunch of enthusiasts couldn't run a tramways.
They were maintaining that a group like ours did not have the expertise or the knowledge, the engineering, nous, anything to run
to operate the rotary converter.
Important electric installation.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's where Murray got involved. You must have been all of about 23 or 4.
Yeah.
You rang me and asked me to have a look at this power supply issue. And yes, we wrote the report, looked at various options, recommended the solid state rectifier to provide the 600 volts DC, and that was subsequently built, and I think is probably still running today.
It was built by Ken Hesse, the late Ken Hesse, who really was a tower of strength for the young committee. There was a man of 70 odd, with this band of 20 somethings, and Vic Smythe, very highly respected air conditioning and plumbing business. The two of them probably lent a lot more weight than maybe we understood.
In the interim, the SEC was moving ahead with its plans and was fielding inquiries from tramway museums all over Australia interested in acquiring some of Bendigo's trams for their collections, unbeknown to the Bendigo Trust.
The Minister of the day, the Honourable Belfer, had promised to give the trams to all the various museums, particularly the Burnies to the TMSV, Trams and Museum Society, and also to Adelaide as well.
On the 11th of September 1972, the Bendigo Trust got the great news that their state application to run the trams on a trial basis as a tourist service had been approved, and they immediately got to work readying trams for the launch in December. But it wasn't long before the minister's plans came to light.
There were two signs that appeared on two of the Burnie trams, not any of the other trams, the Burnie trams in particular. And one was for the number 11, which said no work to be done on this tram number 11. And that tram was destined to go to the Tramways Museum Society of Victoria, supposedly. And the second sign was placed on tram number 29, and it had a similar sign put on it, no work to be done on this tram number 29. I think Ken Hesse then made some inquiries with Ray Downey, the SEC manager, to find out just exactly what was going on, and that's when things began to evolve as far as what was really behind those signs.
It turned out that a truck was on its way from Adelaide to come and pick up tram number 29, and it was already sitting in the depot yard, ready for loading.
Well, of course, once that was revealed, we knew what was going to happen next, because the 4 jacks were immediately adjacent to the tram in the rightful position, as were the carry bars that go across from the jacks. And that sort of started the blood running in many people's veins, and of course there was a call for action.
Yeah, a few of us decided that we were capable of pushing it back in, which we're not able to do now. But we pushed the tram back in without the power, of course, because we didn't have access to the power. So a few of us pushed it back in. Yes, and somebody had welded a piece of pipe across the tram that gave us a lot of publicity, pushing that tram back in, and the pipe being welded across the track.
Now, the statute of limitations is well past. I think you can own up to the fact that you were the person that got out the electrodes and got the welder going and did the job. And we sort of, brushed our hands together at the time. We thought we did a terrific job.
By the next day, there was a barricade of cars outside the depot, and the Mayor of the day, Councillor Joe Pearce, had tipped off the media.
Of course, that immediately caught the attention of the news media in Melbourne, as of course Bendigo was already well aware. And we've got some terrific banners here. Bendigo set for tram battle. It's that's the sort of publicity we really needed at that time.
Councillor Pearce, who was a dentist back then, was waiting for a call about the arrival of the truck.
And it was arranged that at the time I would go to my dental practice in the morning, and our council solicitor was to be alerted, and when the loader arrived we were to go down and to confront them. Mid-morning there, suddenly a male voice called out, "The loader's been turned back at the border."
It seemed that the Adelaide Museum crew had heard about the ruckus and decided to turn back at the state border. With that crisis averted, there was no time to lose. All hands were on deck to get the trams ready for the launch of the first vintage talking tram tour on the 9th of December 1972. Of course, there was many an incident along the way.
Another time where I got caught, the night before we reopened, I'd had people down here, the volunteers, and they were working, and I'd sent them home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had the last trolley pole rope to put on 25. And I was getting a bit tired by this stage, and I'd tied the rope onto the trolley, and I was hooking it up to the thing, and I walked between the 2 trams forgetting the pit was there. And luckily the bumper bars of the 2 trams were fairly close, and as I dropped down, I rested my arms on it, and boy, did it hurt.
But in the end, the support and collective will of the community was what made it happen.
A lot of good volunteers, that there were a lot to prepare the trams for the 9th of December, and there was a lot of volunteers out there sweeping, because we had to sweep the whole track.
We had so many enthusiastic people. I mean, there hasn't been a cause like it since that has put together so many people with so much energy. I don't know how we did it.
You certainly wouldn't do it today. I don't think you'd be allowed to do it today.
Since then, the 9th of December has become a day to remember and an annual celebration in Bendigo.
But the really great day was when the tram service got going again. I mean, there's a lot of drama between being told we could do it and actually getting to
the point of doing it.
But that day, the people turned out in thousands.
And when you think band of enthusiasts, with all the problems, we won. And we have got our trams now. We've been running for 40 years, the longest tramway service in the history of Australian tramways.
You know what happens to successful rebels? They become statesmen and leaders of our society, and they are lauded in the future years. If I look at those guys back then, they were superb in actually thinking through their plans on how to save the trams. They were generals, they were rebels, and they were successful, and now they're our statesmen. So, fantastic effort, guys. Thank you for that. I'd now like to invite the Chairman of the Bendigo Trust, Mr. Lloyd Cameron, to address you. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Welcome, everybody. And a great DVD there to watch. A lot of history. On behalf of the Bendigo Trust Board of Directors, all the staff and volunteers of the Trust and the Bendigo Tramways, I would like to thank you all for coming to share this special occasion with us today. The Bendigo Trust was established 42 years ago by Bendigo councils, it was known then, and also members of our community who were passionate about preserving Bendigo's heritage. Since then, the Trust has become a caretaker of numerous heritage sites around Bendigo, including this great establishment here of the Bendigo Tramways. Today we have a number of past volunteers and employees of the Bendigo Tramways with us, and it is humble to think about the thousands of volunteer hours that many of them have given us over the years, both in good times and in bad times, just to keep the trams on the tracks. All the efforts of these people have led us here today. A moment of reflection on where we have come from and, importantly, the chance to consider where we are ahead. And I am quite happy to report that the Tramways is headed in the right direction. The major renovations to the depot in recent years has made it more appealing for tourist attraction. They've also improved the workshop's capacity to handle major contracts, like the restoration of Melbourne's City Circle fleet. This is very important to ensuring the financial viability of the tramways in the future. However, the heart of the Bendigo Tramways will always be the vintage talking tram, the tour. And that is what we are here to celebrate today. For 40 years our trams have been telling visitors about the history of Bendigo while they trundle through the streets of this great city. Bendigo Tramways is unique in many ways. There aren't many places where you can ride through the centre of a city on a 100-year-old tram. Instead of putting our fleet on display, we put our fleet in use. Our visitors hear the noise of each tram, feel the sway of the trams as it travels along and experiences what it's like for previous generations who used to use the trams as transport in their everyday lives. There aren't many other heritage tramways that have saved so much of their history. The tram depot, the 1972 fleet, and a large and important part of the tram system. There aren't many other heritage tramways with the staff, paid and volunteer, and facilities to turn out major restorations like the City Circle work. Today we celebrate two milestones: 40 years of talking tram and the launch of our newest talking tram. 40 years is a long time, but Bendigo is passionate about its trams, and that is why we are still here and will be here for many years to come. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you, Lloyd. 40 years. Can I just say, throughout that time, we've had one fantastic partner in making sure our trams stay on the road, are staying safe and can continue to roam. And that partner of the city is now the City of Greater Bendigo, and prior to that, the City of Bendigo. To give us a few words about perhaps some of the history and where we are today, would you please welcome to the forum here Councillor Lisa Raffel, the Mayor for the City of Greater Bendigo.
Thanks, Josh. Oh, look, what a wonderful crowd. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and also good afternoon to a couple of my fellow councillors, Les Chapman and Helen Leach. Thanks for coming. It's such a pleasure to be here today to celebrate 40 years of the vintage talking trams and launch of the refurbished tram number 8. Bendigo was one of the first cities in the world to have trams. The first battery-operated trams commenced operation in 1890, but unfortunately the battery trams were unsuccessful, and after only 3 months of operation they were withdrawn and the company went into liquidation. The battery trams were replaced by steam trams in 1892, but by 1897 the company had disposed of its assets to the Electricity Supply Company of Victoria. So in 1903, we're coming up to 2000 I hope, the Electricity Supply Company commenced running the first electrical trams in Bendigo, which proved to be a very important occasion in the history of Bendigo. Trams continued to operate as a public transport in Bendigo until April 1972. In September the same year, the state government granted Bendigo Trust permission to run a heritage tourist tramway service by 4 trams for a 15-month trial period. Clearly the trial was successful, and for the past 40 years Bendigo Trust has become the custodians of the tramways longer than any other operator. Nowadays it's hard to believe that our trams, which we see each day making their way along Pond Wall and High Street, could have been lost to us and many visitors who enjoyed the unique Bendigo experience. Bendigo's talking trams are an icon, part of the city, and I congratulate Bendigo Trust for their enormous effort in continuing to preserve such an important part of Bendigo's history. Bendigo's famous trams are the longest heritage and tourist trams in Australia and a vital part of Bendigo's and its heritage. Since becoming a tourist attraction in 1972, in excess of 2 million people have taken a ride on Bendigo's tram. This demonstrates the great appeal of the trams to many visitors who take the opportunity to ride on these historical vehicles and listen to the story of Bendigo and unfolds as a journey through the beautiful city. Bendigo's Trust is a community organisation that is proudly supported by the City of Greater Bendigo. Bendigo trams are much loved and proudly supported by council and also by countless volunteers and interested citizens who know how important it is to preserve a unique tram fleet, and launch of the refurnished number 8 tram is a testimony of that commitment. My congratulations and heartfelt to the Bendigo Trust for their preserving such an important part of the city's heritage for the past 40 years and providing a fantastic attraction for Bendigo. Thanks to also to the staff at Bendigo Tramways for their expertise and skills and refurbishing tram number 8. You have done a terrific job. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raffel. We have one more person here that represents another key partner in the success of the Bendigo Tramways, that's its volunteers. Back in the early 70s, a young fellow, Craig Lapsley, was one of the volunteers. He was only literally a young fellow at the time, and he was helping out with Tram 10. Today, he is the Fire Commissioner for Victoria, and I'm pleased to say he's been able to join us today to provide us some recollections and perhaps reminisce about some of those early days.
to Lisa as Mayor, and well done. Only a few weeks in to Lloyd, great leadership. It's great to be back in Bendigo, and it's probably good to be standing in what was one day just a shed that was locked up, and you've heard how that was actually reopened. There's a couple of people, and there's many people that you should acknowledge, and it's always dangerous to single a couple out, but it was Ella wanted in before to talk to Darryl McClure. Darryl's over here, James Luke. Darryl was one of those that was the icon, I believe, behind that small group of people that made this happen. And there was something special here that probably those around us will never ever know the passion and the commitment that a small group of people actually drove. To be a young boy that used to go to school on the tram, and that was something special. And when the tram was finished, I never ever caught a bus. That was sort of gone. You actually rode your bike to school. And I don't know why, the buses weren't the same. And to come back and later on, only 12 months later, to then be part as a very young boy, because I think I was only 10 at the time, to ride around on trams and be part of something very special was quite special. And I look back now and say Bendigo is a very important place. But the tramways to me was a very, very, picture there, shot, all right. A good looking boy with hair, obviously. And it wasn't a wig. So to be influenced by George Sang, Jack Worth, Tom Hulls, Jack Evans as the key drivers at the time. The committee, Ken Hesse was an absolutely fantastic gentleman. James Luke, Michael McGowan, John Kelly, and it goes on. Dennis O'Hoy, it just goes on with names that are actually iconic in this town. It's interesting, I think that photo that John Kelly welded the pipe under the tram. I'm not sure John was the best welder at the time, and I'm not sure if anyone actually hit it with anything it would have stayed there, but it was certainly the picture that made the history of what this organisation is all about. And I think whoever thought up, and I'm not sure I know who it is exactly, that they would be talking trams. It wasn't just a tram, it was a tram that talked, and that was something very special. And when there was little technology and they were just cassette recorders with a little button you had to get timed exactly right to make sure that the right script came at the right time, that was a challenge in itself too. And I'm sure technology takes us a lot different now. Prince Charles came and drove the trams, and I think the security around that was something quite significant. And I look at James Luke, I think James was the engineer of this, when all of a sudden the tram stopped and there was an L plate put on as when Charles took over the controls. I think it broke every security thing from the federal government and certainly those that were looking after Prince Charles. The Christmas tram. The Christmas tram was something that was iconic when I was a little boy, and it stayed to be something the Bendigo Trust kept on, and I'm sure that was something many of us remember and something very special. Trams in Bendigo, trams will never let Bendigo. The Mayor indicated to me before it would be great to see them back as a public transport system. Whether they come back as a public transport system or not, they are Bendigo, they represent Bendigo, and across the world they are the iconic part of what a streetscape is so beautiful in Bendigo. It's interesting, someone asked about what to do in a personal sense. I think when I was around here as a young teenager, and I've been lived in Bendigo for 25 years, it was about personalities. You can talk about leadership and you can talk about all those things. It was actually about personalities. There was lots of colourful people with stories and commitment and passion, and that was what made this place such a great place, and I'm sure that's still here today, Lloyd. It's about the commitment and the heart, and it's got a real heart in the Bendigo Trams. It's got a heart in the Bendigo Trust. And the other one I think Lisa touched on, this is something the community owns. This is not the Bendigo Trust being something different, it's actually the community, it's Bendigo's community, and I think that shows here today that the beat is still there, the heart's still part of it, and it's something that's special. And I think the other one that I spend a lot of time with, obviously being in fire services, is about volunteers. What drives volunteers? And what does drive volunteers is about being recognised to be able to participate and have something to do that's worthwhile, and that's the core to what this is here. Just in closing, there was a couple of other things that I thought were very special when I grew up. To drive a tram was something, but to actually be able to fix them, play with the tracks, do all those things that were hard yards, and there's a few of us, Gary O'Hoy, Shane Butcher, Tim Borchers, Adrian Birch, it goes on, the names that were, all of us were young people doing good things around town. And I never used to get in trouble with them, but I think they used to get in trouble by themselves. But it's interesting over there, I think the most iconic thing was tram number 29. 29. Tram number 29 was the tram that was never going to leave Bendigo, and it did. And it got painted up as 303 and went to Adelaide. And it was interesting, because of the history, and you've heard the history, the other tramway museums in Australia didn't actually offer this, because Bendigo didn't give anything away. Bendigo held everything in. And it was very interesting. I remember, and I was probably only 15 or 16, that a group, the senior group, so I think most of it was probably in that picture up there, and the tram drivers actually went on a holiday together to Adelaide. And it was very interesting. We were thinking, how they'll be accepted over there, because Bendigo was seen to be the closed shop, probably the rebels of how it was to be done. And they got over there, it was one of the best experiences I think they ever had. They come back and said, we are part of a bigger tramway system in Australasia or Australia. So it was good. I'm very pleased to be here. It's great to see it. Congratulations on 40 years. It's great to see number 8. And number 8 is only, just shows the history again, that its evolution, as number 8 is no different from number 19 or number 18 or number 30. They all mean something and they're very special. If I'm right, I think number 8 was hidden in Runnymede at one point in time. Or certainly number 7 was down here. And I know there was a group of us as young boys, Adrian, Tim Borges, John Kelly and myself, went and tried to find the trams at Runnymede one day. There was a shed that they were in. And the lady at the time that owned the farm was not all that pleased to see us trying to find where the trams were, the old trams were, and want to try to bring them back to Bendigo. And she looked after the trams extremely well and loved them in her shed and wasn't going to give them up. So I think we snuck over her fence a couple of times. We probably did everything wrong to find them, but we found them, and that was something that was one of those iconic things, and those trams are now back on or will be back on the tracks and are on the tracks. So they're the ventures and importance of what this means. So thank you. Like I said, congratulations to Lloyd. You've got something to lead. It's a great place, and I know you'll lead it well and have done so. So thank you.
Thank you for those words, Craig. Now, besides the 40th anniversary, the other major event today has been the rebuilding and the launching of number 8. I'd just like to give you a little bit of history on that beautiful little vehicle you see out there in the yard. Originally, it was built in Adelaide by Duncan and Fraser for the Bendigo electric tram system in 1903. They were classed as Californian combination cars because they were built along the same lines as those famous cable cars that run along the roads in San Francisco. Number 8 was one of the first 12 trams built by Duncan and Fraser in Adelaide, and it was David Yellowman done this configuration. The tram was modified on several occasions, first in 1913 to make some box cars. The reason for that was pretty simple. Prior to that, you needed a not sure what happened there. Conductor and a driver, and making them boxcars meant they didn't need a conductor. So it's interesting that battle went on for 100 years, because I think we had Connies on a Melbourne system until, I don't know, the 80s or something. Number 8 was withdrawn from service in 1947 and was acquired by private persons. In fact, it's interesting that Craig mentioned that jumping the fence to check out that this number 8 was actually in the shed in Epsom for pigs' poultry businesses, and they use it for storing chook food and things. In 1972, the Trust acquired the tram, and it was the very first one that the Trust actually got. So that was a pretty significant milestone. Now, number 8 has been rebuilt to its 1903 configuration. And I must say, this would not have been possible, it would never have happened, without a generous support and commitment from the Francis and Harold Abbott Foundation. We've got 2 representatives here today, and I'll invite them up for some special things a bit later. But without their significant contribution, this would not have happened. They kicked in $60,000 about 10 years ago to get this project off the ground. And you can imagine, if you look at it, the number of man hours and their dedicated effort required to restore one of these vintage vehicles. So the money that was made available at that time allowed us to totally rebuild the chassis, acquire motors, controllers, all the running gear to actually make it an operating tram. Regretfully, it wasn't quite enough to do a complete job. And to give you an idea, to rebuild a modern tram will cost you probably $1 million. Now, it didn't cost us that because we also had enormous support from volunteer effort. The crowning thing, and what was really fortunate, earlier this year, Lloyd Rogers contributed a few $1,000s to get us off the road and see if we can get it finished. And that's actually was the catalyst that made us decide that we'd pull out all the stops and we put in thousands of hours of volunteer effort to get with those last few $1,000s to make it what it is now. I think that our staff have done a superb job. I think it's the epitome of restoration for vehicles, for trams. And if you look over it later and have a close look at the workmanship, the craftsmanship that goes into these vehicles, it's truly astounding. I'd like to invite Mr. Paul Rowan, the head of the Sandhurst Trustees, to unveil a plaque in a moment, and also to invite Mr. Gordon McCune, who was the chairman of the Sandhurst Trustees at the time the grant was made, to sacrifice a bottle of right top-notch Belgian Shiraz on its front bumper day. It's a waste that, but anyway, look, tradition has it. And in fact, I think we've got a similar bottle that was smashed on the first tram 40 years ago. So this has become a bit of a tradition. I just think, I must admit, I was tempted to take a straw and suck it out before we it's all good stuff there. Perhaps now it might be an opportunity to invite Mr. Gordon McCune to come forward and say a few words. Thank you, Gordon.
Thanks, Josh. Mayor Lisa, councillors Elise and Helen, friends all. I'll be very brief, but I just think today epitomises exactly what Bendigo is all about in two parts. Volunteerism is absolutely unbelievable in Bendigo. We've also been very fortunate in Bendigo to have at least 4 or 5 significant benefactors from years gone by. We've had people like Henry Backhouse, George Lansell, Sidney Meyer, Harold and Francis Abbott Foundation bequest, and the RHS Abbott bequest. And it's because of the income that's been derived from those significant bequests that allow other things to be done in Bendigo along with the volunteer labour. I must make this a privilege and pleasure for me to be chairman of Sandhurst Trustees at the time this application was made, but I don't mind telling you it wasn't a very difficult decision to make because everybody respected and loved the Bendigo Tramways, and to be able to help through the Francis and Harold Abbott bequest was a great pleasure and privilege. It's also pleasing, and I'm not sure whether Paul wants to comment on this or not, it's also pleasing that of those names I've mentioned, Backhouse, Lansell, Meyer, perhaps the Abbott name isn't as well known as the other 3. And it's pleasing that the Sandhurst Trustees Board of today, under Jenny Dawson, is making a definite effort to recognise the name Abbott more and more in the future. So I can only say on behalf of my time at Sandhurst Trustees, well done STL and well done the Abbott family. Thank you for listening.
You know what I got here? This is the shaft of the bottle that was smashed 40 years ago. So, true history. We look after our history, we continue to do so. Feel free to check it out if you like. We'll just wrap this up now and get over the final formalities. So perhaps if I can get Paul to go over and perhaps unveil.
Hi, Richard.
Okay.
How are you? I'm going down here to this photo when
You're lucky.
You're a fan of that as well.
Tram.